Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this session. We're going to be talking class-to-class collaborations featuring Skype and Flipgrid. We're going to be talking all about ways that you can get your class connected with another class in another location, whether it be right where you live or in another city or state or country. Lots of things that you can do together too. So that's really what this whole session is going to be about, is just to give you ideas and talk about how we make all of that happen. My name is Matt Miller. I am the author of Ditch That Textbook and the newly published Tech Like a Pirate. I'm a Skype master teacher, so I've been talking about these class-to-class collaborations for a while and have done them in my classroom. Former high school Spanish teacher here in Indiana in the United States. And after getting to check in with so many of you that are joining us live, I know that this is a very global group that I've got joining live. We've got folks from Croatia, Portugal, Egypt, from British Columbia and Canada, Saudi Arabia, as well as all over the United States in Virginia, Kansas City, California, South Carolina, so on and so forth, South Florida as well. So anyway, it's good to see all of you that have joined live. If you are picking this up in the video replay, then we're so glad that you found it. And hopefully you'll come away with some ideas that can really help you out. So without further ado, I am going to jump over to my slides and we're going to start presenting from there. All right. So like I said earlier, this is the topic of conversation today, class-to-class collaborations, and lots of cool things that we can do together with our students. So with that in mind, I did want to tell you about this real quick before we get started. If you like free things, I know a teacher's favorite price is free, right? So that's why I mentioned this. I have these 3 free ebooks that you can get at my website that give you lots of practical things that you can do with your classroom technology right away in your class. And so you can go to ditchthattextbook.com/101 to get these ebooks. One of them includes 101 practical ways to ditch that textbook, just lots of things that you can start using right away. Lots of ideas for remote learning too. One of them is 50 free templates for teachers. These are the kinds of things that you can download as a PowerPoint or in a variety of different formats and just assign them right to your students immediately. The kind of stuff that sometimes people pay for on Teachers Pay Teachers, but I like to give it away for free, So head to ditchthattextbook.com/101 and you can get that delivered right to your inbox. It also signs you up for my email newsletters where you can get more practical ways for teaching and using technology in your classroom every single week. So there's that. I also wanted to tell you that my session resources are at ditchthattextbook.com/collaborate. That's where you can find a great big blog post that I've written about using video calls in the classroom with all sorts of ideas. So if you want to dive deeper in this later, that's the place to go. ditchthattextbook.com/collaborate. And then also, there are other sessions that you can join, which you can find at q.org/Microsoft. Let me get back to that in I'm going to switch here real quick so that I'm actually sharing my screen. There we go. Okay, so when it comes to that, the other sessions, let me switch real fast over to the Global EdTech Academy website, which again, if you go to q.org/Microsoft, I'll put that back up on the screen in just a second. It'll take you to this site. And this session that we're watching right now is part of the Global EdTech Academy. It's a partnership between Q and Microsoft and has tons and tons of office hours where you can get face-to-face guidance from the presenters. You can do master classes, which are multiple classes on the same topic. And then you've just got regular sessions like this one, hundreds of sessions about a variety of different topics, all free, all recorded, that you can go watch later. You can find the schedule for all of those right up here at the schedule link, where you can browse through all the things that are coming up. And then if you click on session videos, what you can also do is go to a YouTube playlist where they have more than 100 video recordings of the different sessions from the Global EdTech Academy. You can see at this point that there are there are 147 videos in there. So lots and lots of stuff to be able to go check out. I've got a variety of them in there as well if you want to go see any more of my presentations. And really, there are lots of really good ones from a variety of different presenters. So, so yeah, definitely go and check those out because that's really good stuff. Okay, what else have we got? We talked about video replays and where you can find those. So let's dig right into this. We're talking about class-to-class collaborations. And I don't know if you've ever thought about being able to get your class connected with another class, maybe another class within your school district, another one in your city, maybe from a different city or a different state or even a different country. And I'm curious to see in the chat if anybody has had any experience with that. So if you've had any experience, I'd love for you to drop that in to the chat so that I can kind of shout you out. Actually, speaking of the chat, Wendy just said in the chat, so many great sessions this summer, truly blessed by these talented educators who are willing to share their knowledge with us. And, you know, I sort of feel the same way. There are all of these video recordings and all of these scheduled sessions, and they're all available for free. And so there's some really, really good stuff to be had out there. Marilyn says she's done a couple of mystery Skypes, which is cool. That goes right along with what we're talking about here. So. While you're typing, if you're here live and you're typing in some things that you've gotten to do over video calls, I wanted to share with you one of my favorite moments when it comes to getting a class connected with another class. And so what you see on your screen in front of you is up in the top left-hand corner is a class of mine. This was when I was teaching high school Spanish, and this is my Spanish 3 class. And on the main part of the screen is a class that we got connected with from Valencia, Spain. And this was so cool because you know, this was kind of early on in my teaching career. And I'd never really done anything with video calls in the classroom before, but I had heard of other teachers that were doing it. And I thought, man, I teach a world language. What a great opportunity to be able to get my students connected with other kids from the countries where they speak that world language. And I thought about, you know, them being able to communicate together and some of the things that we could do. I wasn't really sure what in the world I was getting into, but I knew I wanted to get into it. Even if it was messy, even if it didn't work out perfectly, I still wanted to do it. And so I went on to the Skype in the Classroom website, which, by the way, is a resource we're going to take a look at later. Still exists, still as great as ever. I went to the Skype in the Classroom website, and I was able to find another class. In this case, it was I think Wendy dropped it into the chat. I don't know if I'm seeing all of the stuff from the chat, but I think she dropped the link to the chat in the chat. So if you want to go check it out, then definitely go check it out. But I found a class from Valencia, Spain. Here were my students in teeny tiny little rural Indiana. And I found this class from Valencia, Spain that I wanted to get in contact with. And so I thought, man, I'll bet every single foreign language class in the United States, you know, the ones that teach Spanish, I bet they've reached out to them already. I bet they have a full calendar of people to talk to. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna give it a shot anyway. So I reached out to that. Teacher of that class, and I said, hey, I teach Spanish here in the United States. I would love to get a video call with you and your students. I know you guys are all probably really busy with, you know, lots of video calls, but I would love to be able to do it. And so, and so she emails me back the next day. And I totally expected her to say, no, sorry, we're swamped. We have all of these video calls. Nope. She emails me back and she goes, nope, you're the first ones to contact us. And I thought, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And so, because I expected them to be swamped. And so what happened was we were able to get our classes connected. And when I say that, it took the form of a couple of different things. For one, our classes were able to do a mystery Skype call. And who was it that said, Marilyn said she's done a couple of mystery Skypes when she was in a classroom. By the way, let me get to the chat real quick. And Jennifer says, I haven't, but others in my school have, as far as doing video calls with classes. In my current position, I'm not able to. Wendy says she Skyped with a couple of classes during Global Read Aloud last year. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Global Read Aloud, it is really cool. It's this program where they pick books and then they pair classes together, or they group classes together, and then they're able to do read alouds together and then talk about the book together. And usually you get paired together with, if you're in the United States, with classes from different states or maybe even from different countries. It's pretty cool. Anyway, Marilyn's on it with the link. Very good. She just dropped that in there with the Global Read Aloud. So thank you for doing that. So if you want to check it out, go click on that link in the chat. It's just theglobalreadaloud.com. Anyway, I digress. So when I say that my students and I got connected with this class, what it really means is we started out by playing a mystery Skype game together. And so this mystery Skype game, this is, if you've never heard of mystery Skype, again, we'll touch on some resources on how you can start this out in your own class. Mystery Skype is this global guessing game where it's your class getting connected with another class. And your students have no idea where that class is from. And these students have no idea where your class is from. The teachers all know, but the students have no idea. And so they get on a video call and they talk to each other. And one class asks another class a yes and no question about their location in the world. And then the other class asks a yes or no question. And as they ask those questions, they're narrowing down on the map, narrowing down where they think they are until they're finally able to guess it. And so my students got on one of these mystery Skype calls with this class in Spain. And so we went back and forth, trying to guess each other's location. They guessed we were in the United States. We guessed they were in Spain. And then we had a little bit of time afterwards. And we got to ask our curiosity questions, things that we just wanted to know about. Like my kids wanted to know, what do you eat for dinner? What kind of shoes do you wear? Just like little things like that. And it was the best. And so they got to ask each other those questions. And our call got done. And then I immediately got on an email with the other teacher. And we were both going, man, I think we're on to something. This is really cool. We can't just make this a one and done video call. We have to start doing more things together. And so, before I tell you what that ended up looking like, the reason I'm telling you this great big story is just so you can see an example of what this might look like in a classroom, so that you can start to kind of, wrap your brain around what this might look like in your classroom too. So anyway, we started off, and what we wanted to do was we wanted to get our students together in small groups so that they were able to talk to each other. So we put them into groups of 2 or 3. And then we just connected over Skype. That one small group would connect with the other small group, and they would do video calls together. When we weren't on video calls, sometimes we were sharing online documents, like a Microsoft Word document online, or, just a variety of different ways where we could do activities together. We'd ask each other questions. I mean, we were just kind of coming up with this stuff off the top of our heads. And it was the best. And what I loved about it, let me wrap this story up real quick so we can get on to some other stuff. But what I loved about it was that my students started to grow their worldview. Because you see, we live in this little rural area out in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. And my students rarely leave the state, let alone the country. And so they got to have an honest to goodness international connection with kids from another country. And they started to realize that these kids lived on the other side of the globe from them, but they were all kids. They were all interested in the same stuff. They all laughed at the same jokes, they were all had similar questions, and they started to realize that these kids don't look alike. They don't speak the same language as us. but we all have so much in common. And it kind of made the world feel a little bit smaller, you know? So that's what I totally loved about that. So that's the reason that I tell you that story, is that, you know, just to help you see, you know, from my perspective, at least, that was one of the big benefits for us, was that my students were able to grow their worldview. And the truth is that if you want to get your class connected to another class of students, A, it's not that hard. And B, there's a lot that you can do together. So let me throw a question out to you real quick in the chat. If you were able to get your class connected with another class of students like yours, so, you know, if you're a fourth grade teacher and you want to get it connected with another fourth grade teacher, if you were able to get your, you know, government class connected with another social studies class in another place, if you were, we've got library media specialists in the house. So if you were able to get some of your students connected with other students to, you know, maybe talk about books they've read or activities they've done or something, what would you guys do? What would you do if you could get your class connected with other classes? That's the big question I want to ask. So just allow yourself to dream for just a second. If you don't have a good answer to that question, that's totally fine. But I wanted to ask just to see what kind of things would you do? So if you're here live, then definitely type that into the chat. If you're watching this on the video replay, maybe ask yourself that question. So I want to pull a couple of responses in from the chat just to see what everybody's saying. And then we're going to jump into some resources that you can use and some ideas that you can plug into your own class. Got to remind myself to breathe every once in a while. Okay, I wanted to drop a couple of comments from the chat into the discussion. Marilyn Kagan said, those kinds of connections, the one she was talking about where, or she's talking about the ones like my class had with the class in Valencia, Spain. She said those kinds of connections help minimize negative stereotypes. And I've got to agree, you know, teaching a foreign language, especially here in the United States, there are lots of negative stereotypes that my students had about people who spoke Spanish, and a lot of misunderstandings. And I could have argued until I was blue in the face about some of those negative stereotypes, and I could have told students how wrong they were and how they needed to change. None of that stuff would have made as big of a difference as getting them connected with some other kids their age and actually letting them meet them. So I'm so glad that she brought that up. Wendy says, this is so important right now. Are students connecting with students that aren't experiencing life in America the same way that they are? Would be amazing. I totally agree with that. Sandra said if she was able to get her class connected with another class, she says, I would like for them to get to know their homeland because of the language. I love that. Yeah. You know, get to know each other, get to know each other's language, and to see some of the similarities and the differences. Marilyn also said, I've done blogging in the past. And I tell you what, that's a really neat way to get a class connected with another class, is if they're able to blog together. If they're able to write about something, students are able to write about something, and then they're able to share it with another class, and that other class becomes their audience. And so then they become writers for an authentic audience more than just the teacher, and even more than just their own classmates. That can be really rewarding. And it can be especially rewarding if they're able to share comments with each other. So let's say students in your class write in their blogs, and then students in another class are able to read those blog posts. And then those other students are able to leave comments back to each other. It's super cool. I'm going to drop into the chat some blog tools that are out there. You've got things like Blogger and KidBlog. Those are some of the ones off the top of my head. Those are some blogging tools that you can go check out if you want to do something like this. Yeah, Marilyn says KidBlog was good for that, but now it's too expensive. I have to agree. You know, I used to use KidBlog a lot with my students. We would do some blogging in my Spanish classroom, but now it's no longer free. And so, you know, if you're able to get a, if you're able to purchase a subscription to it, it's the best. I think it is the best. So, that's something that you could certainly do. Maryland says, we've got two Marylands in this group, so I'm trying to, and they're both Maryland C's. So Maryland C and Maryland C, I'm so glad that you're both here and that you're dropping things into the comments. Maryland Carr says, I like the idea of trying some things with Flipgrid to help with time differences. That's something that we're going to get into as well in this session. She says, my school is also half French immersion, so it would be cool to send videos with other French-speaking countries. Yes. It would also help our kids see how important French is, not just because we're a bilingual country. Great comment. Wendy says, I would love for my kids to chat and interact with a class from a different area of the world without seeing them for a while and then having a reveal session. Doesn't that sound cool? I think this would be an incredibly powerful way for them to understand how similar we are before focusing on our differentness, our differences, So I think that's great. Let's see. And then Wendy says, I think Wakelet. I'm going to attempt blogging with Wakelet this year. I have heard of some teachers who have used Wakelet as a blogging tool. I don't have any resources right off the top of my head, but if you do an internet search for Wakelet blogging, you might be able to find some blog posts of some teachers that are doing that. So if you're looking for another tool to be able to do blogging where students are able to write and then share their writing with others, that's a great idea. So anyway, okay, this is inspiring, hearing all of the chat, all of the conversation in the chat about different things you would do with your classes. So with that in mind, what I'd love for us to do now is to jump into some of the resources that are available and some of the activities that we can do. So that's the whole rest of my session right there is some of the activities we can do and some of the resources we can use. So let's touch on this real quick. And actually, we've touched on some of these benefits already. If you do class-to-class collaborations, like if you get your class connected with another class, what are the benefits of that? Well, for one, meeting new friends from other states and countries. I know that was one of my favorite things when my class got connected with another class in Valencia, Spain. My students were able to meet through Skype calls or through online documents or whatever. They were able to meet the same kids over and over again. So they got to develop a relationship with them. Seeing other perspectives on what you're learning. So, if you're learning about your own state or your own country's history, and you're able to connect with other people from another place, they may have a different perspective on it. Same thing with books that you may be reading, or a wide variety of things that you're studying. Broadening student worldview. We talked about that with my students. Communicating and interacting with different people, even sharing learning with an authentic audience. We were talking about that with blogging too. So we've already touched on some of these. These are some of the benefits, I think, of the class-to-class collaborations. And this, of course, works in remote learning too. If you're getting on a Skype call or a video call with your class, of course, just, connecting with another class through that video call can totally work as well. If you're connecting with your students through Flipgrid videos, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Flipgrid in a second, being able to share those videos with another class is something that you can totally do too. If you're blogging, sharing what you're learning with another class is something you can do. You can do all of these things, whether you're in a remote learning or face-to-face. And so here's the big question. How could my students benefit from learning alongside students in another state or another country or another city, whatever location that is? That's the big question that we've got to ask ourselves, I think. How could my students benefit from learning alongside students in another state or country? So if that's what we want to do, let's dig into how we can do that. Here's one of my favorite tools to be able to do all of this. Skypeintheclassroom.com. So if you go to Skypeintheclassroom.com, I'm going to pull it up right here. This is what the website looks like. Someone dropped it into the chat earlier as education.skype.com. And, if you go to Skypeintheclassroom.com, it redirects to this same page. I like to mention Skypeintheclassroom.com because it's easy to remember, basically. And so what I love about this site, if we scroll down a little bit, is that it is a great big database. And so in this database, you will find virtual field trips that you can take your students on. So you can see like up here in this image, you can see that, you know, this is an example of a virtual field trip in a face-to-face class, of course, where students are watching, and this is a live video call, and someone is, you know, either walking you through a museum or showing you some artifacts from the museum or going to a national park or whatever. All of these that you find on the website are totally free. And then we've also got guest speaker sessions where you can have a guest speaker join your class. So you can see there's a class all gathered together and there's the guest speaker on the screen. But if you want to be able to get your class connected with another class, this is where you want to find it. You can click on this Classrooms/Mystery Skype to be able to find another class that you can get in contact with. Of course, they've also got collaborative projects where classrooms can connect together to work on projects and lessons together. You've got themed collections that you can do too. So really it goes beyond just the classrooms part. But this is the place. This is where I found my class in Valencia, Spain. And so once you click on that, you'll find that, and see here is it, you notice that it's checked Classroom/Mystery Skype. And you can start searching for keywords. But you can also use filters. You can filter by class subject or the subject that you're studying. You can also filter by age range. So like what the age of your students are, the duration of the session, like how long you want it to be. And then you can go down to availability and days, languages, countries, like all of these things you can start to sort of pare it down a little bit. And then once you find a class they're interested in, and by the way, there are lots of them. I mean, there's one from the Netherlands, there's one from Oregon in the United States, Brazil, Israel, India, United Kingdom, Atlanta, Georgia here in the United States, Spain, Pakistan. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I don't have any of them filtered out right now. So this is, you know, this is just showing you the vast majority, or sorry, the wide variety of the different kinds of classes that are there. If you find one that you want to get connected with, you can click on connect with this class. And then when you hit this button, it allows you to send a message to the, you can send a message to the class, and then be able to get in contact with them, and you can set up all of the details. Marilyn, one of the Marilyns, just said, is this possible to do with just a few students? And the answer is yes, absolutely. You sign yourself up on the Skype in the Classroom website, and you get connected. And even if you've got just a handful of students, you can totally set it up this way. Marilyn, see, now my app is saying Marilyn C, so I'm not sure which of you this is, but one Marilyn says, I don't have a regular classroom, and that's okay. You can, I mean, if you have contact with students, then if you want to get a group of those students in connection with another classroom, this is something that you can do. Or even if you don't have a regular classroom, if you want to sign up for a virtual field trip or virtual guest speaker, you can still do that. So, so yeah, this is something that you can definitely do. Let's see, I'm looking back through the chat real quick, and I'm seeing one of the presenters from Wales mentioned a form of Flipgrid that does virtual field trips. We can actually get to that. That's another tool that I'm going to get to in my session in just a little bit. What else do we have here? Virtual field trips are live, which is true. That's something that we were just talking about a second ago. Okay. I thought I would do it during a library session or as a collaboration session with one of our classes. Yes, any of this stuff could totally be done that way. So I think that's a great idea. Okay, so as you can see, Skype in the Classroom is a database for finding different classes you can connect with, virtual field trips you can take, and guest speaker sessions. Did I mention how much it costed, or that it costs? Because I think I did. It's free, just like everything else. Yeah, exactly, Wendy. It's free. That's right. So that's one of my favorite resources, is to go to skypeintheclassroom.com to find these connections. Now we can talk about Flipgrid for just a little bit. And so if you're not familiar with Flipgrid, The idea behind Flipgrid is that it is a video response tool. And so what you can do with Flipgrid is you can, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. You can ask a question or a topic, and then students record responses. And what you see on the screen is kind of what those responses look like. And so, you can see that they show up as little tiles right here on the screen, and then you're able to go watch each other's video responses. And what's neat about these is that you can close them down so that only your class can see them, or you can invite other classes to join in your topics or your grids. And so what you could do, and what's also nice about this too, is that it is asynchronous. If you do a live video call, that's synchronous, which means everybody's together all at the same time. But if you use a tool like Flipgrid, you can ask a question or you can put out a prompt, and then students can record these little videos and they're able to see each other's videos whenever they want. And so they don't have to be together on a live video. Now, I wanted to share this next part too, and I think this is what we were touching on earlier in the chat. And that's a tool like Grid Pals. And so what Grid Pals is, this is a little part of Flipgrid. And so if you want to get your class connected with another class in another city or state or even in another country, you can sign up for Grid Pals. It's a free part of Flipgrid. And then what you can do is you can click on any one of these little green dots, which you will find under Grid Pals. And then there we go. Marilyn's on it with the links. This is fantastic. There's a link in the chat about Grid Pals, which you can find at blog.flipgrid.com/news/gridpals. And so you can learn more about it right there. When you get into Flipgrid, by the way, once you log into your teacher account, there is a tab up at the top called Grid Pals, and that's the easiest way to find it. But I mean, think about this. Basically what this is it's just a huge directory of teachers who have joined it. You can find their contact information. And so, for instance, you can see in this educator's profile, you can see they've shared their Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Skype, LinkedIn, and even an email. And then you can even see some of their topics that they've shared in the Discovery Library. And so if you get connected with a teacher this way, this is an easy way for you to be able to get connected with that class, and then for your classes to be able to share video responses together. So if we look at this previous slide, imagine if your class gets into a Flipgrid topic or Flipgrid grid with another class, and you ask it a thought-provoking question. And then you're able to, both classes are able to reply and share video responses in the same topic. And then they're able to record video replies to each other. This is a really cool way to be able to connect your classes together. And so I want to ask, for those of you that are in the live video call, if you've had any experience with Flipgrid, share it with us. But also, maybe more importantly, if you got your class connected with another class from another location, how could you see Flipgrid playing into that? See, for me, I'll share my experience that in my high school Spanish classes, I could see asking a question and specifying which language I want them to reply in. I could ask a question like between me and my class in Spain I was telling you about. I could ask them a simple question that kind of ties into some of my content. And so we could ask like, what are your favorite things to do on the weekend, and describe them. And I could say, do this in Spanish. And so my students would be conversing in their second language, Spanish, but the kids from Spain would be conversing in their first language, English. And so then they would be able to describe some of the things that they like to do on the weekend. And then they would be able to do video replies back to each other and say, oh, that's such a cool idea. I like to do that too. Or, oh, I never would have thought to do that. Let me ask you a follow-up question to that. And so if they're able to do that, then obviously you've got all of this authentic conversation going on. And it doesn't matter what the time zone is. Doesn't matter what time it is in one place or the other, because they're able to interact in that way, which is pretty cool. Let's see. Wendy says, I think it would be really interesting for the older students to discuss COVID era with other students right now, COVID era with other students right now. I mean, if that is a big part of their life right now, and they want to see how other students are dealing with it, and, what life looks like there. I think that's a very valid question to be able to ask. Marilyn says, I think students would have a different perspective than us. Students from different locations, and that's kind of why we would do this. Absolutely. Sandra says, I only use Flipgrid to work with my class, to record, publish, sing. It's a good idea to hang out. Yeah, so that's something you might think about is, how could your class hang out with another class through a tool like Flipgrid? So let's talk about activities we could do together. We talked about Mystery Skype already a little bit. And so you could have your class get together with another class on a video call without knowing where the other class is. And then they can ask each other these yes and no questions about where their location is until they're able to narrow it down. Now, one thing I wanted to share with you real fast is if you go to that Skype in the Classroom website, which again is at skypeintheclassroom.com, and you click on Mystery Skype, you're able to find other classes, of course, right? We talked about that earlier. But what you can also do is come up here to the resources dropdown and go to For Educators. And they have some really great resources with like getting started with Skype in the classroom. I know there's one right there that says Mystery Skype Resources. And so if you click on that, that's something, and you can see right here, there's all of these. In fact, I think somebody dropped this link into the chat. I'm going to drop it in as well real quick so that you're able to see that link. Yeah, so forgive me if somebody's already, yep, looks like Liliana dropped it in. So I just dropped it in again. But that's a great place to find Mystery Skype resources. So if you want to learn more about that, that's a great place to go. What else have we got in here? So if we're going to have these conversations, what could we talk about? And I'd love if anybody has ideas to be able to drop them into the chat. So what could your class talk to another class about? I think there's a wide variety of things. For one, class content. Whatever you're studying in class, you could always start a conversation about that. How about current events? Whatever's going on in the world. Or even it could be local current events. And it might be interesting for the other class to learn about what's going on in your class, in your area, and what the students think about it. How about life in your location? Like what is it like for me, it was what is it like to live in very rural Indiana, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. For us, it was interesting to ask the class in Spain, what was it like to live in Valencia? Valencia is a very cosmopolitan, modern, big city. And so being able to ask those questions is really good. You could talk about books. You could talk about life issues, like what is it like? Any sort of thing that students are going through, this is something that they could totally talk about. And then what can you do together? Like what kind of activities could you do together? So for instance, you could record videos. We were talking about Flipgrid earlier. How about answer questions? Just Q&A. Ask and answer questions of each other. How about creating things together? Get together in a shared PowerPoint presentation and, create some slides. Create a little infographic together. Create a wide variety of things. You could get into other tools like create a Sway, which is like a single page web page together. You could even use other tools like Adobe Spark to create videos and graphics together. You could brainstorm together, get into a shared document and, just come up with a topic and start to brainstorm together. Or you could even serve the community. What's neat is that whenever you get together with other classes, if you are mission-minded, if you are service-minded, and you want to be able to serve others, you could even get together and think about ways that you could serve each other's communities, or how you could serve your community, they could serve their community, and you could talk about it. Are the ideas starting to swirl in your mind? So we're coming to the end here a little bit, and I wanted to share a couple of video call tips for classes. Number one is be aware of time zones. Somebody talked about that earlier. By the way, if you have questions about these class-to-class collaborations, please do start to drop those in the chat so that so that we can address those before we finish up. And I don't have to be the only one who answers questions. If someone drops a question in the chat and you have an answer to it and you're watching live, please go ahead and share. But do be aware of time zones. One thing that I like to do is just do a simple internet search that says, what time is it in Valencia, Spain? What time is it in Brazil? What time is it in Los Angeles? That's just a super easy way to figure out what time zone they're in and how to adjust accordingly. It's always a good idea to do a practice call ahead of time. So if if you know that you're going to be doing a call with another class, then do a video call the day before, maybe, that lets you practice and make sure that the video works and the audio works and everything. It's also good to prompt your students ahead of time. Talk to them about etiquette. Like, when you're on camera, what are you going to do? If you're doing this remotely, when do you mute your mic and when do you unmute it? Preload them with some information about the people that you're going to be talking to. And then what's super, super important is the debrief afterwards. What were their impressions? What did they learn? What did they think? What questions did they have? Was there anything that concerned them? Was there anything that they could have done differently? That debrief afterwards is really, really important too. And so if you're going to do class-to-class collaborations, that's definitely something to think about. All right, so I'm going to jump in the chat real quick and see if we've got anything else. You had some good ideas of things we could talk about. Jennifer said books that they've read. Marilyn says, what about art or music? If that is, use that as a topic, that would definitely work. If you're asking about an art or music class, I think we could definitely talk about the things that we're studying, but they could also share music that they're learning. They could play it over a video call, or art that they're creating. Liliana says, talk about hobbies. That could totally work. Sandra says, we had an art class with a student in Sweden, so that could totally work. Debbie says, this is probably not the class to ask this, but I do have questions or something you just mentioned. How do we do a shared PowerPoint with another class or other students in Microsoft? I know in Google Slides, but I'm not sure how to do it in Microsoft. That's a great question. Okay, so I'll show you that real fast, because what I have right here is a PowerPoint presentation. These are the slides I was just doing. And so within PowerPoint, by the way, what you're seeing right here is the desktop app. This is like the computer program of PowerPoint. And if you want to do it there, the easiest way to do that is to either use PowerPoint online or to share it through OneDrive. And all of that works online. And so if you have the desktop app, you hit the share button. And what it will do is it will upload it to your OneDrive. And so I'm clicking on my OneDrive so that I can share it. And then once it's there, then I can get a link so that I can share it with others. And I can mark whether I want them to be able to edit or not. You can do the same thing on PowerPoint online too. And so it's as easy as going to powerpoint.com or office.com, and then you hit that share button. And it really works the same way. If you're familiar with Google Slides, it works very similarly. So you can see right here that now I can copy the link to share, or I can edit it so that, is it anyone with the link? Do I want to let them edit, or do I just want to have them view? And then once that's applied, then I can copy that link and share it. So in some ways, it's very similar to Google Slides as well. So I'm glad you brought up that question. So, okay. All right, wonderful. Well, I think we've touched on all of the questions in the chat that we've had so far. And we've gone through a lot of stuff in this session, so I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm going to wrap this up. And again, ditchthattextbook.com/collaborate is a good place you can go to find more ideas when it comes to class-to-class collaborations. So, All right, this has been fantastic. I've had the best time hanging out with all of you. So thank you so much for joining this session. Again, q.org/Microsoft is the place that you can go to find more sessions. In fact, at the top of the hour, I'm going to be doing an office hours. So if you have more questions to ask me about anything, feel free to do that. I know there's a whole school that's bringing a whole bunch of people to this office hours, and we're going to be talking about some things in that too. So feel free to join. q.org/Microsoft is where to find the link. So, and thank you for the kind comments as we wrap up. I had a fantastic time hanging out with all of you. So, oh, and Debbie, I'm going to see you. Awesome. You're from that school. That's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with all of you. I think that's the American Academy. Is that what it's called? So anyway, looking forward to seeing those of you in that session. So I'm going to stop the recording here, and I'll look forward to seeing you on another session at some point. Take care.